Meanwhile, at the Leaky Cauldron, during the quiet hours of a December evening, you're falling asleep to the soft crackle of a fire and the gentle hum of an old inn settling in for the night. Nothing in the room asks anything of you. The evening unfolds at its own gentle pace. Welcome to another slow, detailed story from the edges of the wizarding world. Tonight, Hannah Abbott's December evening shift, managing the Leaky Cauldron. A cozy winter evening of warm firelight flickering across old wooden beams, the scent of mulled cider drifting from the bar, and the comfortable weight of tradition settling through every creaking floorboard. An evening where the work is gentle, familiar, and wonderfully predictable. Checking that the holiday decorations are properly hung and charmed, preparing the fire for the few evening guests, recording inventory levels in the storeroom ledger, and ensuring that one particular ghostly visitor has his favourite table waiting by the hearth. Nothing dramatic, just the calm, steady rhythm of caring for an ancient inn through a peaceful December night, where even ghosts find comfort in the season. So take a breath, let your shoulders drop, and allow the warmth of the Leaky Cauldron to support you, however that looks for you tonight. It's 6:30 in the evening. Hannah steps behind the worn oak bar into the golden glow of candlelight, the old building exhaling its familiar scents of wood smoke and centuries of hospitality. The narrow windows along Charing Cross Road show only darkness now, the street beyond invisible to those without magic, the pub existing in that comfortable space between two worlds. The bar itself is a masterpiece of accumulated history. Oak planks worn smooth by countless elbows, the surface marked with rings from generations of butterbeer tankards and goblets. Hannah's fingers trace one particularly deep ring near the brass tap handles, a mark from some long ago spill that no amount of polishing could ever quite remove. The wood is warm beneath her touch, heated from below by charms that have maintained the same comfortable temperature since before her grandmother's time. There's something deeply satisfying about this warmth, the way it seeps into your palms when you lean against the bar, the way it seems to radiate welcome. The oak has absorbed centuries of conversation, laughter, and quiet contemplation, storing them in its grain-like memory, releasing them back into the room in subtle ways that no one consciously notices, but everyone feels. 5 brass taps stand in a gleaming row, each one polished to a mirror shine. The first dispenses butterbeer, thick and sweet, the classic drink that has sustained wizarding Britain for generations. The second offers gilly water for those who prefer something lighter, cleaner, more purely refreshing. The third holds mulled mead, especially popular this time of year, its spices drifting up in waves of cinnamon and clove. The fourth provides traditional pumpkin juice, cold and crisp, harvested from autumn's bounty. And the fifth tonight dispenses spiced cider, warming and rich, pressed from Somerset apples, chosen for their perfect balance of sweet and tart. Each tap has its own personality, its own rhythm when pulled, its own distinctive sound as liquid flows into waiting glasses. Behind the bar, shelves rise to the ceiling in carefully organised rows. Green glass bottles of Ogden's Old Fire Whisky occupy the top shelf, their contents glowing faintly amber when candlelight catches them. Below, single malt bottles from various distilleries stand in patient formation. Crystal decanters hold special elixirs, their stoppers ground to perfect fits. Lower shelves display everyday glasses arranged by type. Tumblers for fire whisky, tall glasses for butterbeer, small glasses for mead, wide bowls for cider. Pewter tankards hang from brass hooks, their surfaces dimpled with age and use. Everything occupies the position it has earned through decades of service. Hannah moves along the bar's length, checking each element with practiced efficiency. 6 clean glasses catch the light here, their surfaces so pure they seem to glow. 4 tankards hang ready there, polished this morning until they gleamed. A stack of napkins sits perfectly folded, each one embroidered with a tiny golden snitch, wings captured mid-flutter by some talented witch's needlework decades ago. The bar rag rests in its usual spot, a clean white rectangle folded with care. The tip jar waits in the corner, an old ceramic cauldron that once brewed potions but now collects appreciation, a few sickles already glinting inside from the afternoon service. Beneath the bar's surface lies a warren of drawers and cupboards, each containing exactly what's needed for smooth service. This drawer holds spare quills and parchment, the quills self-inking, ready to record orders. That one contains bottle openers, some mechanical, others charmed to work with a simple tap. Another drawer stores clean towels, folded and stacked with military precision. One holds garnishes for drinks, preserved lemon slices, dried orange wheels, bundled cinnamon sticks, whole cloves in a small glass jar. Another contains bowls of salted nuts, roasted almonds, and cashews that encourage thirst and conversation in equal measure. She retrieves tonight's log from the rightmost drawer, feeling the soft leather binding worn smooth by hundreds of hands over the years. Inside, neat columns wait to record the evening's business. Date, time, item, quantity, price, total. The afternoon shift has already made several entries in careful handwriting, documenting the lunch service and early evening customers. Hannah opens to the current page, her own quill poised to continue the record that stretches back through decades, eventually to be archived as part of the pub's permanent chronicle. The brass cash register dominates one end of the bar, a Victorian-era mechanical marvel that somehow incorporates subtle magic into its purely mechanical operations. Each key bears a hand-engraved number or symbol, worn smooth by thousands of touches, but still perfectly legible. Inside, velvet-lined compartments organise currency. Gold galleons heavy and bright in one section, silver sickles lighter but substantial in another, bronze nuts filling the third. A separate space holds occasional muggle money from confused tourists who somehow find their way through the barrier, their pounds and pence carefully sorted for later exchange. When the drawer opens, it produces a satisfying chime, a note that has announced transactions for over a century. Above the bar hangs the enchanted mirror, its surface showing not simple reflection, but a complete view of the entire pub in reverse. Hannah glances up and sees the room spread before her, the fireplace burning on the left instead of right, the staircase ascending backwards, every table and chair perfectly visible, every corner illuminated. It's more useful than any number of backward glances, allowing her to monitor the entire space while continuing her work. The mirror has hung there since the pub's founding, its magic growing stronger and more reliable with each passing year. One of those rare enchantments that improves with age. The evening special menu rests on a small easel, written in Hannah's careful hand on a slate board. Tonight's offerings reflect December's bounty. Traditional shepherd's pie with rich gravy, beef and mushroom pudding wrapped in golden pastry, winter vegetable soup thick with root vegetables and herbs, fresh baked dinner rolls still warm from the oven, and for dessert, mince pies that fill the pub with the scent of dried fruits and warm spices. The prices haven't changed in 3 years, a decision Tom made and Hannah has maintained, believing that consistency matters as much as quality in hospitality. She finishes her bar preparations by testing the warming charms, one final time, tapping her wand against the wood's edge and whispering the activation phrase. Magic pulses through the oak, subtle but present, raising the temperature just enough to make the bar inviting to cold hands, encouraging guests to linger, to rest their elbows, to stay a while. The charm is old and well established, requiring only the lightest touch to maintain, but Hannah never skips this final check. Some details matter precisely because they're small, because they're easy to overlook, because their absence would be felt even if their presence goes unnoticed. The candles require Hannah's attention next, each one needing to be lit individually despite the temptation to cast a general lighting charm across the room. Tom taught her years ago that guests notice the difference, even if they can't articulate what feels different. Hand-lit candles burn more steadily, their flames straighter, their lights somehow warmer than magically summoned fire. So Hannah picks up the long taper, already lit from the hearth, and begins her evening rounds, moving from table to table in the gathering dusk. The candles themselves are quality beeswax, expensive, but worth every knot. They burn clean without smoking, produce a subtle honey scent, and last twice as long as cheaper alternatives. Each sits in a brass holder designed centuries ago, the base wide enough to catch drips, the sides curved to direct wax inward rather than letting it run down and make a mess. The brass has been polished to a warm glow, each holder reflecting its candle's flame in miniature, creating tiny points of light that multiply the illumination. She starts at the front table nearest the door, the first thing guests see when they enter. This candle is slightly larger than the others, its flame taller and more prominent, a beacon of welcome. Hannah touches her taper to the wick and watches the flame catch, grow, settle into steady burning. The wax begins melting immediately, pooling clear and golden around the wick, releasing that characteristic honey sweetness into the air. One small light in the growing darkness, the first of many. Moving to the foretop by the east wall, she lights its candle with the same careful attention. This table sits beneath one of the small windows, where guests can watch Charing Cross Road if they know how to see past the concealment charms. The candle illuminates the scarred wooden surface, highlighting grain patterns and the countless small marks left by previous diners. Someone carved initials here once, decades ago, the letters worn, almost smoothed by time, and cleaning, but still faintly visible if you know where to look. The booths along the back wall each get 2 candles, one at either end of their tables, providing enough light to read by while maintaining the sense of privacy these high-backed seats are known for. Hannah lights each one methodically, watching the flames bloom to life, the brass holders gleaming as they catch the light. The booths have darker wood than the rest of the pub, making the candles feel even more important here, their small fires pushing back against shadows that would otherwise dominate these cosy alcoves. The centre tables come next, 6 of them arranged in 2 neat rows where the pub's social heart beats strongest during busy evenings. These candles are standard size, meant to provide light without becoming obstacles to conversation or sightlines across the table. Hannah lights them in sequence, the taper's flame touching wick after wick, each new candle adding its glow to the growing warmth. The room is transforming from the dim space of late afternoon into the welcoming haven of evening, one small light at a time. Near the fireplace is the table Hannah has come to think of as Nick's table, though no official designation marks it as such. It's a 2-top positioned at an angle that provides both warmth from the fire and a clear view of the room. The candle here has been burning since late afternoon, kept lit, specifically for nearly headless Nick, who prefers to arrive before the evening crowd and appreciates having his spot clearly marked and welcoming. The flame burns steadily, protected from drafts by its position near the stone hearth. She climbs the 3 steps to the raised section at the back, where 4 smaller tables offer elevated views of the pub's main floor. These tables are popular with solitary readers and people watchers, those who enjoy observing the social theatre below while remaining slightly removed from it. The candles here have small glass chimneys protecting them from drafts, while magnifying their light, creating small beacons visible from everywhere in the pub. Hannah lights each one carefully, ensuring the chimneys are properly positioned. The final candles are decorative ones, scattered throughout the pub, on shelves and windowsills, not for illumination so much as atmosphere. These are smaller, set in various holders Hannah has collected, a copper dish here, a ceramic bowl there, an old brass candlestick on that shelf. Each adds another point of warmth, another small flame reflecting in glass bottles and brass fixtures and polished wood. Individually, they contribute little, but collectively they transform the space, making it glow. With the last candle lit, Hannah extinguishes her taper and returns it to its holder by the bar. The pub has completed its transition from day to evening, every table glowing with soft light, the entire room suffused with warmth and welcome. The flames burn straight and steady, no guttering or smoking, each one doing its small part to hold back the December darkness. It's not something guests will consciously notice, but it's something they'll feel, this carefully tended atmosphere of comfort and safety and home. Hannah retrieves the wooden ladder from behind the bar, the traditional kind that requires no magic, just proper positioning against solid surfaces. She carries it to the front corner where the first of the evening's decoration checks awaits. December at the Leaky Cauldron follows certain traditions, some centuries old, others more recent, but no less important. Each element requires attention, adjustment, confirmation that magic and nature remain in proper balance. The holly comes first, real branches gathered from somewhere deep in the countryside where ancient groves still flourish under protective enchantments. Dark green leaves gleam in the candlelight, each one edged with sharp points that demand careful handling. Bright red berries cluster at intervals, their colour so vivid they seem to glow within a light. Hannah reaches up to adjust a swag that has slipped slightly along the wainscoting, and the leaves rustle with a sound like stiff parchment, releasing a faint bitter scent characteristic of the plant. The preservation charms are holding perfectly, keeping the holly as fresh as the day it was cut. She traces one branch with her finger, feeling the slight tingle of magic, maintaining the illusion of continued life. It's a simple charm, one she refreshes weekly, more routine maintenance than urgent necessity. But routine matters in a place like this. The regular attention that prevents small problems from becoming large ones, that keeps everything functioning at the level guests have come to expect over generations. Above the fireplace, holly drapes in a thick garland, secured at 3 points by brass hooks that have hung there since the pub first opened. The firelight catches the glossy leaves, makes the berries seem to pulse with their own warmth, creates moving shadows on the stone that dance with the flames. Hannah adjusts the centre section, ensuring the curve remains symmetrical, the weight evenly distributed, the overall effect balanced and pleasing to the eye. Ivy joins the holly in several places, darker green vines winding through the lighter branches in traditional pairings. The ivy is also real, also preserved, its smaller leaves just as glossy as the holly's larger ones. In a few carefully chosen spots, Hannah has added sprigs of mistletoe, positioned over doorways according to centuries of tradition, though she's placed them high enough that no one can claim an accidental kiss without making their intentions quite clear. The mistletoe requires the most complex preservation charm, accounting for its parasitic nature, and Hannah checks each sprig carefully for any signs of browning or wilting. Near the ceiling, magical decorations provide gentle movement to complement the static beauty of natural greenery. Golden snowflakes drift lazily through the air, each one unique, each one catching candlelight as it turns and floats. They're charmed to avoid flames, to drift around obstacles, to maintain their slow dance without requiring any attention. Hannah watches them for a moment, verifying the charm's stability. The snowflakes follow smooth paths, their rotation gentle and natural looking, occasionally catching air currents that make them spin faster before returning to their leisurely pace. Each window wears a wreath, circular arrangements of evergreen branches interwoven with red silk ribbons. The wreaths are charmed to stay perpetually green, their pine needles releasing fresh scent whenever anyone passes nearby. The ribbons are expensive silk, purchased years ago as an investment in quality, and they've proven their worth, maintaining their deep red colour and crisp appearance through multiple holiday seasons. Hannah checks each bough, ensuring every loop remains even, every tail hangs at the proper angle, every knot stays secure. The windows themselves bear decoration beyond the wreaths. Frost patterns cover the glass, but these aren't natural formations. They're magical designs, white tracery that never melts, never drips, depicting ferns and flowers and geometric shapes that seem to grow and shift if you watch long enough. Hannah traces one pattern with her finger, feeling the slight chill that accompanies the charm, seeing her breath mist for just a moment before the room's warmth reclaims the air. Scattered throughout the pub are smaller touches that add detail without overwhelming. Bowls of nuts in shells mixed with dried fruits, and small sweets wrapped in coloured paper sit on various surfaces. Arrangements of candles in graduated heights, tied together with ribbons, occupy corners and alcoves. Small evergreen trees in brass pots, their branches hung with tiny glass ornaments that catch and reflect light, bring the scent of pine into the warm air. Each small decoration contributes to the overall atmosphere of comfortable celebration. On the mantel between the andirons sits a nativity scene, carved from dark wood, each figure simplified but expressive, their faces showing the wear of centuries. It's not primarily a religious decoration, but a historical one, acknowledging the pub's roots in both magical and Muggle culture, the way it has always existed at the boundary between worlds. Hannah dusts each figure with a soft cloth, careful not to disturb their arrangement, respecting the tradition even as she maintains it. She descends the ladder and folds it closed, satisfied with the decoration's condition. Everything is properly in place, all charms functioning correctly, the holly and ivy and mistletoe maintaining their preserved perfection. The temperature drops suddenly near the fireplace, a chill that seems to emanate from the stones themselves, rather than any draught. Hannah looks up from arranging glasses and sees the telltale shimmer in the air beside the hearth. Nearly headless Nick is arriving for his evening visit, materialising slowly from whatever realm ghosts occupy when they're not visible to the living. The process takes several seconds, his pearly, translucent form becoming gradually more solid-looking, though of course he'll never be truly solid again. He emerges fully from the wall, floating a few inches above the floor, in the way ghosts do, unbothered by gravity or physical surfaces. Tonight he's added a festive touch to his usual Tudor-era attire, a sprig of holly tucked into his feathered hat, the berries glowing with soft light that has nothing to do with preservation charms. Ghosts can't truly manipulate physical objects, but they can create impressive illusions when they choose, and Nick has always had a flair for presentation. The effect is charming, a touch of seasonal spirit from someone who technically has no spirit left. "Good evening, Hannah," he says, his voice echoing slightly, the way ghost voices do, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. "The decorations are particularly lovely this year. You've maintained Tom's standards admirably, my dear. I've been observing Christmas decorations in this establishment since 1612, when they were considerably more rustic than what you've achieved here. Hard benches and tallow candles in those days, I can assure you, and the smell of unwashed customers quite overwhelming. Modern hygiene is one of the few genuine improvements I've witnessed in 4 centuries. "Thank you, Sir Nicholas," Hannah replies, stepping out from behind the bar. "Your usual table is ready. I kept the fire burning especially high tonight since you mentioned last week that you can actually sense the heat on particularly cold evenings, even though it doesn't affect you the way it affects the living. It seems like it should be a comfort, at least this warmth we create for December." Nick drifts toward his preferred table, the two top positioned at an angle between fire and window. He doesn't sit so much as position himself approximately where a sitting person would be, his ghostly form passing slightly through the chair's back in a way that remains disconcerting even after months of witnessing it. "Most kind of you, most kind," he murmurs, adjusting his position with small floating movements. "The heat doesn't warm me precisely, but I can perceive it, and perception is everything when you have no actual sensation left. On the coldest nights, being near fire reminds me of what warmth felt like, and memory, I've found, is the closest thing to feeling that ghosts possess." Hannah brings a mug of mulled cider to his table, knowing he can't drink it but maintaining the ritual they've established over the months. It's a gesture of normalcy, of inclusion, treating him as she would any other guest, despite his transparent state, and the chill he brings with him. The mug sits on the table, steam rising from the spiced liquid, the scent of cloves and orange peel drifting upward. Nick looks at it with what might be gratitude, if ghosts can properly express such things. His pearly features showing something approximating a smile. "The Christmas season has always been my favourite," he says, gazing around the pub with obvious fondness. Even in death one can appreciate the effort humans make to bring light and warmth to the darkest time of year. It's particularly meaningful when you're as cold as I am, when you exist in permanent chill. The decorations, the fires, the warm drinks, the good cheer, they don't change my condition, but they remind me of when I had a condition worth changing, when warmth mattered because I could feel its opposite. Though I must confess the holiday has changed considerably since my youth, Nick continues, settling into storytelling mode the way he often does. "We had no Christmas trees in my day, you know. That's a German innovation, brought over in the 19th century by Prince Albert, Queen Victoria's consort. In Tudor times, we made do with holly and ivy, and the occasional Yule log. Much simpler celebrations, really, though perhaps no less meaningful for their simplicity. Sometimes I think we've added so much decoration that we've lost sight of the essential thing, which is gathering together when the darkness is longest." The fire crackles loudly, sending up a shower of sparks that dance behind the protective screen. Nick watches them with something like delight, his face reflecting the orange glow, even though he himself produces no shadow. Hannah returns to her bar preparations, comfortable with his presence, his rambling commentary part of the pub's evening atmosphere now. He comes most evenings during December, drawn by something he can't quite explain, finding comfort in the warmth he can't feel and the company he can't truly join. "Some ghosts haunt places because they're trapped there," Nick says quietly, almost to himself. "But I haunt the Leaky Cauldron because I choose to, because it reminds me of being alive in ways that Hogwarts, my official residence, never quite manages. Here, people come and go freely, choosing to be present, choosing to gather, choosing warmth and food and drink and conversation. At Hogwarts, people are there because they must be, because of duty or learning or obligation. Here, presence is voluntary, and that makes all the difference. Voluntary gathering, voluntary warmth, voluntary kindness. These are the things ghosts miss most, I think." Nick settles more fully into his evening position, his form taking on the particular solidity that ghosts achieve when they're comfortable in a space. He's been coming to the Leaky Cauldron for decades now, Hannah knows, though he's been dead for over 4 centuries. The pub represents something to him that Hogwarts, for all its grandeur, cannot provide. Here he's simply another guest, albeit a transparent one, rather than a historical fixture that students either gawk at or ignore depending on their familiarity with ghosts. "Tell me, Hannah," he says, his voice carrying that peculiar echo, "how was business this week? I confess I haven't been here since last Saturday, and I always worry the pub might suffer during my absence, though of course my presence has no material effect on revenue whatsoever. It's vanity, really, this assumption that my attendance matters, but we ghosts have so little left to us that we cling to whatever small sense of participation we can manufacture." "Business has been good," Hannah replies, wiping down the bar while they talk. "Monday was quiet as Mondays usually are. Tuesday picked up slightly. Wednesday was busy because of the Quidditch match. Lots of celebrating Holyhead Harpies supporters. Thursday and Friday were steady. Tonight should be strong. People are getting into the Christmas spirit, coming out more despite the cold, or perhaps because of the cold, seeking warmth and company." Nick nods thoughtfully, his head wobbling slightly on his nearly severed neck, a detail Hannah has learned not to stare at. The Christmas spirit is a powerful force, he muses. I've observed it for centuries now, and it never quite diminishes, never quite succumbs to commercialization or cynicism the way doomsayers predict. There's something fundamental about gathering in darkness, about creating light and warmth together, about sharing food and drink when resources feel scarce. It speaks to something ancient in human nature, some tribal memory of survival through cooperation. "Do you celebrate Christmas at Hogwarts?" Hannah asks, curious about his dual existence, split between the castle and the pub. Nick considers the question, his pearly features thoughtful. "We observe it, certainly," he says. "The castle is decorated quite elaborately. The house elves prepare magnificent feasts. The students enjoy themselves tremendously. But I don't celebrate precisely. I attend, I witness, I participate in the way ghosts can, which is to say, I'm present without truly engaging. It's rather like watching a play you've seen hundreds of times. You appreciate the performance, but you're no longer surprised or deeply moved." Here, though, something about his tone shifts, becomes more earnest. Here is different. This is voluntary gathering, people choosing to be present, choosing to spend their evening in this particular place. There's an authenticity to it that formal celebrations often lack. These people, he gestures vaguely toward the empty tables that will soon fill. They come because they want to, because the Leaky Cauldron offers something they need. And watching people get what they need, watching their relief and pleasure at finding it, that never gets old, even after 400 years of observation. Hannah finds herself touched by this confession, this ghost's articulation of why her work matters. She's thought of hospitality as important, certainly, but hearing Nick describe it as endlessly watchable, as something that retains meaning even across centuries, gives her a new appreciation for what she does. The work can feel routine, repetitive, the same tasks performed in the same order day after day. But Nick's perspective reminds her that repetition doesn't mean meaninglessness, that routine can be profound when it serves genuine human needs. The temperature rises slightly as the fire burns stronger, and Nick shifts position, angling himself more directly toward the warmth. "I wonder sometimes," he says quietly, "what I'm meant to learn from all this. Ghosts exist because we refuse to move on, because we clung to the living world despite death's invitation to release it. I chose to stay, though I can't quite remember why anymore. Can't recall what seemed so important that I'd accept this half-existence over whatever comes next. And now, I'm stuck, watching life continue without me, participating only as observer. But then I come here," he continues, "and I watch you prepare the pub for evening service. I watch you light candles individually when magic could do it instantly. I watch you check tables that are already clean, arrange napkins that are already straight, perform all these small rituals of care that no one requires but that you do anyway. And I think perhaps that's the lesson, perhaps that's what I'm meant to understand. That meaning comes from attention, from care given freely, from excellence pursued for its own sake rather than for recognition or reward." Hannah doesn't know what to say to this, moved by the depth of thought behind Nick's rambling philosophical observation. She settles for simple honesty. "You're welcome here, Sir Nicholas," she says. "Ghost or not, your presence is valued. You add something to the evenings, even if you can't drink the cider or eat the food. The Leaky Cauldron is better for having you as a regular guest." Nick smiles at this, that peculiar ghost smile, and inclines his head in acknowledgement. "Thank you, my dear," he says. "That means more than you might realise." Behind the bar, Hannah reaches for the large copper pot that sits on a specialised warming plate, its surface gleaming from recent polishing. The mulled mead has been steeping since late afternoon, filling the pub with its signature aroma. She lifts the lid carefully, releasing a cloud of fragrant steam that carries notes of honey, cinnamon, star anise, and citrus. The liquid inside glows deep amber in the candlelight, moving with a viscous slowness that speaks to its richness. The recipe is Tom's, passed down from the previous landlord, who received it from his predecessor, creating an unbroken chain stretching back to the pub's earliest days. Hannah has the ingredients memorised now, but she still keeps the handwritten card tucked behind the bar, Tom's careful script, documenting proportions that matter. 3 parts honey mead to 1 part spiced apple cider. Heated gently, never boiling. Cinnamon sticks, whole cloves, star anise, cardamom pods, strips of orange and lemon peel, the pith carefully removed. A splash of brandy added at the very end, just before serving. She stirs the mixture with a long wooden spoon, worn smooth by years of use, its handle marked with small burns from careless contact with hot metal. The liquid swirls lazily, spices moving through it in slow spirals, releasing their essences into the sweet base. The smell intensifies with stirring, becoming almost overwhelming in its complexity. Hannah breathes it in deeply, letting the warmth and fragrance fill her lungs, a small pleasure that marks the beginning of proper evening service. The warming plate beneath the pot maintains perfect temperature, through a charm that requires renewal only once per season. Too hot and the alcohol burns off, the delicate spices turn bitter. Too cool, and the flavours fail to meld, the drink becomes merely warm instead of warming. The charm holds the liquid at precisely the right point. Hot enough to steam gently, but never bubble, creating the perfect balance that makes the Leaky Cauldron's mulled mead legendary among those who know. Hannah ladles a small amount into a tasting glass, a ritual Tom taught her on her first day. Always taste before serving, he'd said. The recipe may be consistent, but ingredients vary with the seasons, and a good landlord knows her product intimately. She sips carefully, letting the liquid coat her tongue, identifying each element. The honey comes, first sweet and floral, then the spices warming and complex, finally the citrus bright and cutting through the richness. Everything is perfectly balanced. Tonight's batch is excellent. She begins preparing mugs, selecting them from the shelf with care. The pub owns several types of drinking vessels, but mulled mead deserves the heavy ceramic mugs with wide mouths and sturdy handles, glazed in deep red and forest green, decorated with holly patterns that seem appropriate for the season. Each mug gets a quick inspection for chips or cracks before being placed in a neat row along the bar's surface, ready for filling when orders come. Near Nick's table, she notices his untouched cider has stopped steaming. Hannah retrieves it quietly, replacing it with fresh without comment. He won't drink this one either, but the gesture matters. The acknowledgement that his presence is valued, that even ghosts deserve fresh drinks and attentive service. Nick nods his thanks, his pearly form flickering slightly in the candlelight, and returns to his contemplation of the fire. The first living customer of the evening will likely arrive within the next half hour, Hannah estimates. Glancing at the clock on the wall, its hands move with mechanical precision, brass catching the light, ticking away the seconds with quiet authority. The time between 6:30 and 7 is usually quiet, a lull before the evening properly begins. People are finishing their dinners at home, completing the day's errands, preparing for the transition from work to leisure. Soon they'll start arriving, drawn by the promise of warmth and company, and perhaps a mug of something warming. Hannah pours herself a small cup of the mulled mead, a privilege of her position, and takes it to lean against the bar, looking out over the pub she's come to love. The decorations glow in the candlelight, the fire crackles steadily. Nick sits in comfortable silence at his table. Everything is ready, prepared, waiting. These quiet moments before service begins are precious, brief spaces of calm before the pleasant chaos of a busy evening. She sips her drink slowly, savouring both the flavour and the peace. The copper pot continues to steam gently, its contents maintaining perfect temperature, ready to pour. The pub smells of cinnamon and orange, wood smoke and beeswax, old wood and older magic. Outside, December darkness presses against the windows, but inside is nothing but warmth and welcome. Hannah finishes her drink, rinses the cup, and returns to her position behind the bar. The evening is about to begin in earnest, and she's ready for it, fortified by good mead and the satisfaction of work done well. For now, Everything is secure. Everything is steady. The warmth continues. Hannah pulls the evening ledger closer, opening it to today's page where the afternoon's transactions are already recorded in neat rows. The ledger itself is a beautiful thing, bound in dragonhide that has aged to a soft brown. Its pages, thick parchment enchanted to resist the spills and tears. Each entry is made with permanent ink that can be modified only with specific counterspells, a protection against fraudulent alterations. The pub has maintained such ledgers since its founding, and the archive room upstairs contains hundreds of them, a complete financial history of the Leaky Cauldron stretching back 5 centuries. She reviews the afternoon's business first, a habit Tom insisted upon. 9 butterbeers at 3 sickles each, 4 orders of fish and chips at 6 sickles, 2 shepherd's pies at 7 sickles each, a bottle of Ogden's at 20 sickles, various other items totalling 36 sickles and 14 nuts. The arithmetic is correct, the handwriting clear, everything properly documented. The afternoon server, Marcus, is meticulous about record keeping, one of his many virtues as an employee. Now Hannah begins her own entries for the evening. 1 mulled cider, complimentary, served to nearly headless Nick. She notes this in the ledger, not because ghosts pay, obviously, but because Tom taught her to document everything that crosses the bar, even gifts. It creates a complete picture of the pub's operations, he'd explained, showing not just what's sold, but what's given, what's wasted, what's consumed by staff. True hospitality means knowing exactly what you're spending on goodwill. The quill she uses is self-inking, a convenience that still feels slightly magical even after years of use. She dips it once at the beginning of her shift, and it writes in perfect black ink for hours, never running dry, never needing refilling. The enchantment is simple but elegant, the kind of practical magic that improves daily work without drawing attention to itself. Hannah appreciates these small efficiencies, the way magic can make tedious tasks slightly less tedious without eliminating the essential human element of careful attention. She turns back several pages, reviewing the week's patterns. Monday was slow, only 31 galleons total. Tuesday picked up slightly, 42 galleons. Wednesday was busy, 67 galleons, likely because of the Quidditch match that afternoon. People celebrating victories or drowning sorrows. Thursday returned to normal, 45 galleons. Friday, yesterday, was the week's best, 73 galleons, as Fridays usually are. People are looser with their money at week's end, more willing to spend on celebration, more inclined toward generosity. Tonight, being Saturday, should be strong. Saturdays typically bring in between 60 and 80 galleons, depending on weather and competing events. The cold helps business, driving people indoors seeking warmth. The Christmas season helps too, putting people in festive moods, making them more social, more generous with rounds of drinks for friends and strangers alike. Hannah estimates tonight will reach the higher end of the range, perhaps 75 galleons if the evening goes well. She makes a note to herself to check the butterbeer stock before the evening rush truly begins. The pub goes through enormous quantities during busy periods, and running out is unacceptable. There's a storage cellar beneath the pub, accessed through a trapdoor behind the bar, where barrels and bottles are kept at ideal temperature through ancient preservation charms built into the stone itself. Hannah makes a mental note to descend after finishing the ledger work to verify they have sufficient stock for tonight's anticipated demand. The financial picture overall is healthy. The pub is profitable, not wildly so, but comfortably, providing Hannah with a modest salary and covering all expenses, with room left over for savings and occasional improvements. Tom left her a thriving business, and she's maintained that standard, neither growing it aggressively nor allowing it to decline. Stability matters in an establishment like this, consistency of experience being more valuable than constant innovation. The Leaky Cauldron offers the same warm welcome it has for centuries, and that's precisely what guests want from it. She records a note about needing to reorder candles soon. The pub goes through them quickly during December, when nights are long and every table stays lit until closing. The supplier is a witch in Wales who makes them by hand using traditional methods, and orders must be placed at least 2 weeks in advance. Hannah calculates quantities, estimating usage, adding a buffer for unexpected busy periods. 3 dozen should suffice until January. The ledger work is soothing in its way, this careful accounting of the pub's daily life. Each number represents a transaction, a moment of hospitality exchanged for fair payment. The patterns tell stories: busy nights following Quidditch matches, slow afternoons when rain keeps people home, the gradual increase in mulled mead orders as December deepens. Hannah finds satisfaction in this record keeping, in knowing exactly how the business functions, in understanding the rhythms that govern the pub's financial health. She closes the ledger and tucks the quill back into its holder, the evening's first task complete, ready now for whatever comes next. Hannah turns to the expense side of the ledger, the columns that track what the pub spends rather than earns. This week's deliveries are recorded in neat rows: 40 galleons to the brewery for barrels of butterbeer, 15 galleons to the produce supplier for vegetables and fruits, 22 galleons to the butcher for meat, 8 galleons to the dairy for milk and butter and cheese. The numbers add up quickly, showing how much the pub spends to maintain its operation, how narrow the profit margin actually is when all expenses are properly accounted for. There are also the fixed costs, the expenses that remain constant regardless of how busy the pub gets. Rent, though the pub owns its building, still requires payment to the Magical Properties Office for licences and protections. Insurance against magical accidents and property damage costs 12 galleons monthly. Utilities, though largely magical, still require maintenance fees. The enchantments that preserve the building, that keep the plumbing working, that maintain the protective wards, all require annual renewal by professional curse breakers and charm specialists. These costs are substantial, paid quarterly, causing dramatic dips in the bank balance that recover only gradually through steady business. Then there are wages. Hannah pays herself a modest salary, 30 galleons weekly, enough to cover her rent and living expenses, with some left over for savings. Oliver receives 25 galleons weekly, appropriate for a skilled cook. Marcus, the afternoon server, gets 15 galleons weekly for part-time work. The cleaning staff, 2 witches who come in early mornings to scrub floors and polish brass, receive 10 galleons weekly between them. Personnel costs represent the pub's largest expense category, but Hannah considers them essential. Tom taught her that underpaid staff provide underpaid service, that quality hospitality requires paying people fairly for their skilled work. She reviews the bank balance, seeing the current financial position. The pub holds 430 galleons in its main account. A comfortable buffer against unexpected expenses, but not so much that Hannah feels wealthy. This balance represents months of careful management, of busy nights offsetting slow ones, of conscious decisions to repair rather than replace, to maintain quality while controlling costs. The pub is financially healthy, but not rich, profitable, but not extravagantly so, exactly the position a centuries-old establishment should occupy. Hannah makes a note about needing to negotiate with the brewery soon. They've announced a price increase for the spring, 5% across all products, citing rising costs for ingredients and transportation. 5% sounds modest until you calculate its impact on annual expenses. The butterbeer alone will cost an additional 100 galleons yearly, a significant amount for a business this size. She'll need to raise prices slightly to maintain margins, but price increases risk, alienating regulars who expect consistency. It's a delicate balance, managing the business's financial health while preserving the experience that makes the pub valuable to its guests. The ledger shows seasonal patterns that Hannah has learned to anticipate. December and January are strong months, people seeking warmth and celebration. February drops off as winter fatigue sets in, and money spent on Christmas creates household austerity. March recovers slightly as spring approaches and spirits lift. April and May are solid as weather improves and people emerge from hibernation. June through August slow dramatically as people prefer outdoor activities, though tourists provide some offset. September rebounds as routine returns. October through November builds steadily toward December's peak. This cyclical pattern requires planning, saving during busy months to cover slow ones, ensuring the pub can weather natural variations in demand. There's also the tax situation to consider. The magical tax office requires quarterly filings, complex documents that account for every transaction, every expense, every galleon that passes through the business. Hannah employs an accountant, a meticulous goblin who charges 30 galleons quarterly, but saves far more than that through his knowledge of legitimate deductions and proper documentation. The tax burden is substantial, roughly 30% of profit, but it's the price of operating legally, of maintaining the licenses and permissions that allow the pub to serve both magical and mundane customers. She closes the ledger and stores it carefully in its drawer, the financial picture clear in her mind. The pub is doing well, not spectacularly but solidly, maintaining the standard Tom established, providing employment, serving guests, contributing to the community. The numbers tell a story of careful stewardship, of a business passed down through generations and maintained with respect for its history and responsibility for its future. Hannah feels the weight of this stewardship, the knowledge that she holds something larger than herself, something that will continue beyond her tenure if she does her job properly. The night unfolds without hurry, each number, each task settling into place. Hannah emerges from behind the bar carrying a wooden tray loaded with supplies for table preparation. Each table requires specific attention before the evening crowd arrives, small touches that transform them from merely clean to properly welcoming. She starts with the four tops along the east wall, the tables that will fill first once guests begin arriving, positioned as they are with good views of both the fire and the entrance. First, she wipes each table with a clean cloth, dampened with a mild cleaning solution that smells faintly of lemon. The wood is already clean from this morning's scrubbing, but this final pass removes any dust that has settled during the day, any fingerprints left by afternoon customers, ensuring each surface is pristine. The cloth moves in circular motions, following the grain of the wood, a meditative repetition that she's performed thousands of times. The tables gleam under her attention, their age-darkened surfaces reflecting candlelight. Next comes the placement of salt and pepper shakers, small pewter vessels that have served the pub for decades. Each set gets positioned at the table's centre, angled slightly so the salt faces the most common seat, a small detail that most guests never notice, but that Hannah maintains nonetheless. Beside them goes a small ceramic pot containing sugar cubes for tea, wooden stirrers inserted at an angle for easy access. These elements are purely functional, but their arrangement matters, creating a sense of readiness, of thoughtful preparation. Hannah places fresh napkins at each setting, folded into simple rectangles. The pub owns several hundred napkins, all embroidered with the tiny golden snitch that serves as an informal logo, though there's nothing official about it. The embroidery was added by Tom's mother decades ago, each one stitched by hand during slow winter afternoons. They're showing their age now, some of the stitching loose, some of the fabric worn thin, but Hannah can't bring herself to replace them. They're part of the pub's character, these carefully embroidered reminders of patient handwork and lasting care. Each table gets a small vase containing a sprig of holly, another nod to the season. The sprigs are real, preserved by the same charms that maintain the larger decorations, and they add a spot of colour to each table, a visual reminder of Christmas without being overwhelming. Hannah adjusts each one slightly, ensuring they stand straight in their narrow vases, their red berries catching the light, their dark leaves providing pleasing contrast against the worn wood. The menus come next, small slate boards that list tonight's offerings in Hannah's careful handwriting. Each table gets one menu positioned at the centre, angled toward the most common, approaching direction. The slates are charmed to be easily erasable with a damp cloth but resistant to accidental smudging, a practical enchantment that makes frequent menu updates feasible. Tonight's selections haven't changed from this afternoon, but Hannah checks each slate anyway, ensuring the writing remains clear and legible. She moves to the booths along the back wall, repeating the process with slight variations. The booths require extra attention to their bench seats, checking that the cushions are properly positioned, that no stray crumbs or debris have collected in the corners. These high-backed seats are popular precisely because they offer privacy, and that privacy extends to maintenance. Things can hide in booths that would be obvious at open tables, so Hannah is thorough, using a small brush to sweep out corners, fluffing cushions, ensuring everything is perfect. The two tops near the fireplace come next, including Nick's table, which receives the same careful attention as any other, despite his inability to interact physically with most of its elements. Hannah sets the table with napkin, salt, pepper, sugar, holly sprig menu, treating it as though a living customer might arrive at any moment. This is partly for Nick's benefit, maintaining the fiction that he's an ordinary guest, but partly for the living customers too, demonstrating that every table in the pub receives equal care. Finally, Hannah attends to the raised section at the back, climbing the 3 steps with her supplies. These tables are smaller, more intimate, designed for solitary diners or couples seeking slightly elevated perspective. The preparation here is the same as elsewhere, but feels different somehow, perhaps because these tables are chosen deliberately by guests seeking that particular vantage point. Hannah ensures they're perfect, understanding that people who choose these seats are often looking for specific qualities in their evening. With all tables prepared, Hannah steps back to survey the pub as a whole. Every table is ready, set with care, waiting for guests. The repetitive work has created a unified effect. The pub feels prepared, welcoming, ready for the evening's business. It's another small thing that guests probably don't consciously notice, but unconsciously they'll feel it. This sense of a space that's been thoughtfully tended, where someone has paid attention to details because details matter. Hannah returns her tray to the bar, satisfied with the preparation, ready now for guests to begin arriving. Hannah pushes through the swinging door into the kitchen, leaving the warm ambience of the pub for the bustling efficiency of food preparation. The kitchen is smaller than you might expect for an establishment this size, but it's been designed with magical efficiency in mind. Preservation charms keep ingredients fresh far longer than normal refrigeration. Self-stirring pots manage their own heat, preventing burning. Knives sharpen themselves. The space works smoothly because magic handles the tedious elements, leaving human cooks free to focus on flavour and presentation. Tom's nephew, Oliver, stands at the main preparation counter, chopping vegetables with practiced efficiency. He's been the pub's primary cook for 3 years now, having learned the trade from his uncle before taking over full responsibility. The Leaky Cauldron doesn't serve fancy food, but it serves good food, honest and substantial, the kind that satisfies after a long day. Oliver understands this mission perfectly, treating shepherd's pie with the same respect a fine restaurant might give caviar. "Everything ready for tonight?" Hannah asks, surveying the organised chaos of preparation. Pots simmer on the enchanted stove. Ingredients are laid out in neat rows. Clean plates are stacked and waiting. Oliver nods without looking up from his chopping. "Shepherd's pie has another 20 minutes, he says. "The soup is ready now. Fresh rolls will be out of the oven in 10 minutes. We've got enough prepped for about 40 dinners, maybe 50 if portions run slightly small. Should be plenty for a Saturday." Hannah checks the soup pot, lifting the lid to release a cloud of fragrant steam. The winter vegetable soup is one of Oliver's specialties, thick with root vegetables and herbs, rich with stock made from roasted bones. She can identify carrots, parsnips, potatoes, leeks, all cut to uniform size, all tender but not mushy. A piece of crusty bread and a bowl of this soup makes a perfect light dinner, especially on a cold December evening. The scent alone is enough to make her hungry. The shepherd's pie sits in its large baking dish, cheese browning on top, filling bubbling at the edges. Oliver makes it in quantity, cutting squares to order rather than preparing individual portions. It's more efficient this way, and the result is better, the filling having time to settle and marry its flavours, the potato topping forming a proper crust. The dish will hold its heat for hours in the warming drawer, ready to serve until the kitchen closes. Fresh rolls sit on baking sheets, golden brown and glossy with butter. Oliver makes them from scratch each day, refusing to buy from suppliers despite the extra work. They're simple rolls, nothing fancy, but they're perfect. Crusty outside, soft inside, still warm from the oven. Guests tear them open and watch steam rise, then slather them with butter that melts immediately. It's a small luxury that elevates the entire meal, this commitment to making things properly rather than taking shortcuts. "How's the mince pie inventory?" Hannah asks. "We sold a lot yesterday." Oliver gestures toward a covered tray. "Made 2 dozen this afternoon," he says. "Plus, there's another batch of filling ready if we need more. The tarts only take 20 minutes to bake, so I can do emergency batches if we run low." The mince pies are purchased frozen from a supplier, a compromise Oliver accepted reluctantly, but he makes his own filling to add to them, enriching the commercial product until it tastes homemade. They discuss the evening's likely volume, comparing it to previous Saturdays, adjusting expectations based on weather and competing events. The kitchen and bar operate as partners, each dependent on the other's success, and communication between them is essential. Hannah needs to know what Oliver can produce. Oliver needs to know what demand Hannah expects. Together, they calibrate the evening's preparation, ensuring there's enough food without wasteful excess. A timer chimes softly, and Oliver moves to retrieve the rolls. He slides them off the baking sheet onto a linen-lined basket, covering them with another cloth to keep them warm. The basket goes into a warming drawer, set at the perfect temperature to maintain heat without continuing to cook. Everything in this kitchen has been optimized through years of trial and error. Every tool and technique refined until it works smoothly. It's not glamorous cooking, but it's deeply competent, the kind of reliability that keeps customers returning. Hannah returns to the pub, letting the kitchen door swing shut behind her. The contrast is always striking. The kitchen's bright lights and active movement versus the pub's softer illumination and relative stillness. But both spaces are preparing for the same event, the evening service, each contributing its essential element. The kitchen will produce the food. The bar will provide the drinks and atmosphere. Together, they'll create the experience that makes the Leaky Cauldron what it is, a warm refuge from December's cold darkness, a place where good food and drink are served with genuine care. The door opens, bringing with it a gust of cold air and the evening's first customers. A couple enters, stamping their feet on the mat, brushing snowflakes from their cloaks. Hannah recognizes them immediately. David and Sarah, regulars who come every Saturday evening without fail. They've been married for 40 years and have established their routine with the precision of long practice. The same table, the same drinks, the same comfortable silence, punctuated by occasional conversation. "Good evening," Hannah calls from behind the bar, already reaching for the mugs she knows they'll want. "Your usual table is ready." David nods his thanks and begins unwinding his scarf, while Sarah heads directly to their preferred spot, a two-top near the fireplace, but not so close as to be uncomfortably warm. They move with the confidence of people who know exactly where they belong, who have claimed this space through years of consistent presence, Hannah prepares their drinks without needing to ask. Butterbeer for David, served in his preferred pewter tankard at room temperature rather than chilled. Gilly water for Sarah in a tall glass with a slice of lemon, cold but not iced. She delivers them to the table just as they're settling into their seats, coats hung on the hooks behind them, gloves tucked into pockets. "Thank you, dear," Sarah says with her usual warm smile. "Chilly one tonight, isn't it?" Hannah agrees that it is indeed quite cold and returns to the bar. The door opens again, and 3 young wizards tumble in, laughing loudly, bringing youthful energy that contrasts sharply with the elderly couple's quiet dignity. They're apprentices from Diagon Alley, Hannah knows, probably just finished with their work week and ready to celebrate. They claim a table near the centre of the pub, talking over each other, already debating what to order, their voices carrying through the space with unself-conscious volume. Hannah approaches with menus, though she suspects they won't need them. Young people tend to order the same things: butterbeer, fish and chips, maybe some mince pies if they're still hungry after. Sure enough, they request 3 butterbeers immediately, promising to decide on food in a minute. Hannah returns with their drinks, sets them down carefully, and leaves them to their animated discussion of something involving brooms and proper banking techniques on turns. A solitary figure enters next, an older witch Hannah doesn't recognise. She's dressed formally in deep purple robes, her grey hair pulled back severely, her expression neutral. She surveys the pub with careful attention, before choosing a table in the raised section, positioning herself where she can observe the room without being directly in its flow. Hannah gives her a moment to settle before approaching with a menu and a welcoming greeting. The witch orders mulled mead and the winter vegetable soup, speaking precisely but not unkindly. Hannah notes the order and returns to the bar to prepare. The mead, ladling it carefully from the copper pot into one of the red glazed mugs. She places it on a small tray, along with a spoon and napkin, then adds a side plate with 2 fresh rolls and a pat of butter. The soup will come from the kitchen, but these elements she can provide immediately. Nick watches the arriving guests with obvious pleasure, his pearly form more visible now that the pub is filling with life. He catches Hannah's eye and smiles, that peculiar ghost smile that's more suggestion than expression. This is what he comes for, she realises, not the fire or the decorations or even the conversation, but this, the simple pleasure of watching human beings gather, of observing life being lived, of witnessing the small rituals of hospitality and companionship that he can no longer participate in directly. The door opens twice more in quick succession. An elderly wizard, shuffling in alone, heading immediately to his usual corner booth. A mother with 2 children, looking harried, seeking refuge from shopping expeditions. Each arrival changes the pub's energy slightly, adding their presence to the growing atmosphere of occupied warmth. Hannah moves between tables, taking orders, delivering drinks, maintaining the careful balance between attentive service and respectful distance. Within 30 minutes, the pub has transformed from nearly empty to comfortably busy. Not crowded yet, but occupied, alive with conversation and movement. The young apprentices are louder now, emboldened by their second round of drinks. David and Sarah sit in companionable silence, hands occasionally reaching across the table to touch briefly. The solitary witch in purple eats her soup with delicate precision, observing everything while engaging with nothing. The mother's children have calmed, occupied with warm cider and rolls with butter. The elderly wizard in his corner booth reads a newspaper that moves with enchanted images. And Nick sits among them all, visible only to those who know to look, pleased by the gathering he has witnessed countless times, but never tires of experiencing. The door opens again, admitting a group of 4 witches who enter with the easy confidence of long-time friends. They're middle-aged, dressed warmly against the cold, chattering animatedly about something that happened at work. Hannah recognises 2 of them as regulars who come monthly, but the other 2 are new faces, likely friends from elsewhere joining for the evening. They choose a large table near the centre, claiming space with the casual authority of people who know they belong. Hannah approaches with menus, but they wave them away. "We know what we want," one of them says cheerfully. "4 mulled meads to start, and we'll do the winter vegetable soup, all around, with extra bread." They're here for conversation, clearly, the food and drinks serving as excuse rather than purpose, providing reason to gather and extend their time together. Hannah takes the order and returns to the bar, pleased to see the pub filling with exactly this type of group. Friends gathering voluntarily, choosing to spend their precious free time together in this particular space. She prepares their mulled meads with care, ladling the fragrant liquid into 4 matching mugs, arranging them on a tray with napkins and spoons. The tray goes to their table with practiced balance, Hannah navigating between occupied chairs without bumping anyone, placing each mug precisely before its intended recipient. The witches thank her with genuine warmth and immediately return to their conversation, voices rising and falling in the particular rhythm of friends who know each other deeply and can speak in shorthand, assuming shared context, building on years of accumulated understanding. A solitary wizard enters next, young, perhaps early 20s, with the uncertain air of someone new to the area. He pauses just inside the door, surveying the pub with visible anxiety, clearly wondering if he belongs here, if he'll be welcome. Hannah recognises the look, having seen it countless times. New arrivals, people unfamiliar with the Leaky Cauldron's particular culture, often need reassurance that the pub is genuinely welcoming rather than secretly exclusive, despite its public appearance. She approaches him before he can retreat. "Good evening," she says warmly. "First time at the Leaky Cauldron?" He nods, relaxing slightly at her friendly tone. "Just moved to London," he explains. "Heard this was the place to come if you're magical and new to the city." She smiles. "You heard right," she confirms. "Sit anywhere you'd like, and I'll bring you a menu. There's a nice quiet spot up on the raised level if you prefer people watching, or you can sit near the fire if you want warmth." He chooses a small table by the fire, following her gesture, settling in with visible relief. Hannah brings him a menu and takes a moment to orient him. "The butterbeer is excellent," she says, "if you've never tried ours specifically. The mulled mead is perfect for cold nights. The shepherd's pie is tonight's special, and it's quite good. The soup is vegetable-based, very filling." He listens carefully, grateful for guidance, and orders butterbeer and soup. Safe choices that won't challenge an uncertain palate. She brings his drink quickly, wanting him to feel attended to know he made a good choice in entering, that the Leaky Cauldron will take care of him. The apprentices at their table have reached the boisterous stage, their second round of butterbeers loosening inhibitions, their laughter becoming louder, their gestures more expansive. They're not drunk, just cheerful, enjoying their youth and freedom and the pleasant buzz that comes from good beer and better company. Hannah monitors them with the practiced eye of someone who knows when groups are having harmless fun versus when they're heading toward disruption. These 3 are fine, she decides, just young people being happy. No intervention needed. David and Sarah prepare to leave, gathering their things with the slow deliberation of elderly people who've learned not to rush. Sarah folds her knitting carefully, placing it in a canvas bag worn soft by years of use. David marks his page and tucks the book under his arm. They stand together, supporting each other subtly, and approach the bar to pay their bill. Hannah tallies it quickly and accepts their payment, adding a warm goodbye and wishes for a safe walk home. They smile and leave arm in arm, stepping into the cold night after their weekly ritual of warm drinks and a quiet companionship. 2 more customers enter together, colleagues from some shop in Diagon Alley, Hannah guesses, based on their matching aprons visible beneath winter cloaks. They're tired, she can tell, the deep fatigue that comes from standing all day serving demanding customers. But they're also relieved. The work week finally over, freedom stretching ahead. They order fire whiskey, doubles, and sink into chairs with grateful sighs. The weekend has officially begun for them, and the Leaky Cauldron marks that transition, the boundary between work and rest, duty and pleasure. There was more chaos too, Nick says thoughtfully. The Christmas period was 12 days, not just one, and there was the tradition of misrule, turning social order upside down temporarily. Servants might dress as masters, masters as servants. A lord of misrule would be appointed to organise festivities, often someone of low status given temporary authority. It was a safety valve, allowing release of social tensions through controlled chaos, letting people mock authority briefly before returning to normal hierarchy. Magic was more hidden then, more secret, Nick continues. The witch trials had not happened yet in my youth, but there was always suspicion, always danger. Magical folk celebrated Christmas alongside everyone else, but had to be careful about our specific traditions, about the ways our celebrations involved actual enchantment rather than symbolic gesture. We would cast blessing charms over our homes, but call them prayers. We would use magical decorations, but claim they were just particularly clever craft. We lived in both worlds, but had to pretend one of them did not exist. The church was much more central, of course, Nick says. Midnight Mass on Christmas Eve was not optional. It was socially mandatory, unless you wanted to be suspected of heresy. The religious element was genuine for many, but it was also social requirement, community obligation. You attended because everyone attended, because absence would mark you as different, potentially dangerous. The purely secular Christmas you see now, focused on gifts and family without mandatory religious observation, that is quite modern, really. In my time, separating Christmas from church would have been unthinkable. Hannah listens, fascinated by these glimpses into a world utterly different from her own, yet still recognisably pursuing the same goals. Warmth, community, meaning. She asks another question. What do you miss most about being alive during Christmas? Nick considers this carefully before answering. The taste of mince pie, he says finally, and the warmth of mulled ale, and most of all, the feeling of exhaustion after a long feast, that particular fatigue of overindulgence, of having celebrated so thoroughly that your body demands rest. Ghosts do not get tired, you see. We cannot overeat or overdrink. We cannot feel that pleasant excess that comes from celebration. I miss having limits, strange as that sounds. For a moment, Hannah pauses near the warmth of the fire, letting the quiet fill the space around her. The pub settles. The candles flicker, and the old inn offers its soft, familiar stillness. Nothing pressing, nothing urgent, just the room breathing with her. The fire has burned low while Hannah was occupied with service, the flames settling into glowing coals that produce more heat than light. She retrieves the iron poker from its stand beside the hearth, feeling its weight, cool in her hands, despite its proximity to the heat. Fire maintenance is an art she learned from Tom, who insisted that a well-tended fire was central to pub atmosphere, more important than any number of decorations or clever drinks. She kneels on the hearthstone, warm beneath her knees, and begins working the coals with the poker. The goal isn't to rebuild the fire immediately, but to reorganize the existing fuel for maximum efficiency. She pushes the unburned ends of logs toward the center where heat concentrates, creating opportunities for them to catch. She collapses the structure slightly, bringing burning pieces into closer contact, encouraging them to share their heat more effectively. Ash has accumulated at the fire's base, insulating the coals from necessary air. Hannah uses a small shovel to scoop it out, transferring the grey powder to a metal bucket kept for this purpose. The ash is still hot, tiny orange sparks visible in its depths, and she handles it carefully. Once removed, the coals glow brighter, receiving better airflow, their temperature rising perceptibly. The fire responds to this attention like a living thing, which in some ways it is, this controlled combustion that humans have tended for millennia. Now she adds new fuel, selecting from the wood box beside the hearth. The Leaky Cauldron burns oak primarily, purchased from a supplier who seasons it properly, aging the wood for at least 2 years before selling. Well-seasoned oak burns hot and long with minimal smoke, producing the steady heat a pub needs during December. Hannah chooses 2 logs of medium thickness, neither too large nor too small, and positions them at angles over the glowing coals. The logs don't catch immediately, which is correct. Fire needs time to establish itself, to dry the new wood surface, to raise its temperature to ignition point. Hannah waits patiently, watching for the telltale signs. First, the wood begins to blacken, then tiny wisps of smoke appear, then suddenly small flames lick up the sides, and finally the wood properly catches, becoming part of the fire rather than merely fuel awaiting consumption. The whole process takes several minutes, time she spends adjusting the logs' positions, ensuring they'll burn evenly. With the logs burning steadily, she replaces the protective screen, a necessity in a space where people might be drinking and not paying attention to their proximity to open flame. The screen is wrought iron, worked in a pattern of intertwined vines, functional but beautiful, another example of the pub's attention to detail. It's been there for over a century, its metal darkened by heat and age, its function unchanged. The fire's warmth has already intensified, radiating outward from the hearth in waves. Hannah stands and moves back slightly, feeling the heat on her face, too much this close, but perfect at the distance where tables sit. Fire is a tricky thing to manage, powerful enough to heat a large space, but dangerous if neglected, requiring constant attention without being demanding. Tom used to say that tending the fire was like tending the pub itself. It needed regular care, careful observation, and respect for its fundamental nature. She washes her hands at the small sink behind the bar, scrubbing away the ash and soot, drying them on a clean towel. Her knuckles are slightly reddened from the heat, but that will fade. Firework always leaves small marks, tiny reminders of proximity to something elemental. She returns to her position, behind the bar, glancing back at the hearth where the fire now burns strongly, flames dancing over the new logs, light flickering across the stone, warmth spreading through the pub. Nick has shifted his position slightly, angling toward the fire, and Hannah wonders if ghosts can sense heat differences, or if he's simply drawn to the fire's light and movement. Either way, he looks pleased, his transparent form seeming almost to glow in the firelight, his ancient clothing catching reflections that make him seem more present, more real. The fire brings life to everything it touches, even things that aren't technically alive. The pub's atmosphere has deepened with the fire's renewal. Conversations seem warmer somehow, faces more animated in the flickering light. The flames provide movement that draws the eye, creating a focal point that anchors the space. Ancient instinct responds to fire, that primitive comfort of warmth and light pushing back darkness and cold. The Leaky Cauldron's hearth has burned for 5 centuries, and tonight's fire is just another in an unbroken chain stretching back to the pub's first evening. The same logs burning, the same heat spreading, the same ancient comfort being offered to anyone who enters. The pub has reached that perfect level of occupation where it feels alive but not overwhelming. Conversations overlap without becoming noise, creating a pleasant hum that fills the space with human warmth. Hannah moves between tables, refilling drinks, clearing empty plates, maintaining the flow of service that keeps everything running smoothly. She's developed the ability to track multiple tables simultaneously, knowing who needs attention without appearing to watch them, approaching at precisely the right moment. At the apprentices' table, the conversation has turned to sports. One of them is explaining a Quidditch play with elaborate hand gestures, nearly knocking over his butterbeer in his enthusiasm. His companions laugh and argue, each offering their own interpretation of the proper technique. Hannah approaches during a pause, asking if they'd like another round. They confer briefly and agree, and she returns to the bar to prepare 3 more butterbeers, listening to their continued debate as she works. David and Sarah's silence has deepened into something almost meditative. They sit across from each other, Sarah knitting something small and blue, David reading a book with obvious enjoyment, occasionally looking up to share an amusing passage. Hannah has learned that some couples' silence is louder than other people's conversation, communicating comfort and companionship in ways words can't match. She refreshes their drinks without disturbing their peace, and they nod their thanks without breaking their gentle quiet. The witch in purple has finished her soup and now sits with her mulled mead, a book open before her, though Hannah notices she reads very little. Instead, she watches the pub, her eyes moving from table to table, observing interactions with an anthropologist's detachment. Hannah wonders what she sees, what patterns she's identifying, what conclusions she's drawing about this collection of people gathered against December's cold. Perhaps she's a writer researching authenticity. Perhaps she's simply lonely and taking comfort in proximity to community without participating in it directly. A new customer enters, shaking snow from his cloak. He's middle-aged, dressed in the robes of a ministry worker, looking tired in the way people do after long days of bureaucratic tedium. He chooses a seat at the bar, unusual for evening service, when most people prefer tables, and Hannah greets him with professional warmth. "Fire whiskey," he says. "Double neat." She pours it without comment, recognizing the tone of someone who needs drink more than conversation, and places the glass before him, along with a small dish of salted nuts. Near Nick's table, a young couple has settled in, clearly on an early date, their body language betraying their nervousness. They're trying too hard, laughing too loudly at mediocre jokes, complimenting each other with obvious calculation. Nick watches them with something like nostalgia, and Hannah wonders if ghosts remember courtship, if those ancient feelings persist beyond death or fade like so much else. The couple orders butterbeers and soup. Safe choices, nothing too adventurous, keeping things simple while they navigate the complex dance of getting to know each other. The mother with her 2 children is preparing to leave, gathering coats and scarves, counting coins to pay her bill. The children move slowly, reluctant to return to the cold, and their mother has the patience born of long practice. She lets them finish their cider completely, lets them button their coats at their own pace, understanding that rushing children rarely speeds anything up. Hannah tallies their bill and accepts payment with a smile, adding an extra piece of shortbread wrapped in paper for each child, a small gift that makes them grin. Hannah returns to the bar and begins washing glasses, a task that provides useful occupation while allowing her to monitor the room. The water is hot, almost uncomfortably so, and her hands turn pink under its heat. Each glass gets washed in soapy water, rinsed in clean, then set on a drying rack where a charm removes all moisture within seconds. The process is meditative, rhythmic, allowing her mind to drift while her hands work automatically. Nick rises from his table and drifts toward the bar, settling into the ghost's approximation of sitting on a bar stool. "A lovely evening, Hannah," he says. "Such pleasant energy in the room tonight. People are happy, or at least content, and that contentment is palpable. It's what I love about December, you know. The darkness makes people seek each other out, makes them value warmth and companionship. In summer, people are more independent. Winter forces community." Hannah agrees, drying her hands on a towel. She's never thought about it quite that way, but Nick is right. Winter does drive people together, does make the Leaky Cauldron more essential to its guests. The pub isn't just convenient in December. It's necessary, a refuge from the dark and cold, a place where warmth and company are guaranteed. She looks around at the occupied tables, the conversations, the small groups gathered against the season, and feels privileged to maintain this space, to provide this service, to be part of this ancient tradition of hospitality. The pub reaches its peak occupancy around 8 o'clock, every table claimed, conversations creating a pleasant roar that drowns out individual words. Hannah moves with practiced efficiency, her attention split between multiple demands simultaneously. She's taking an order at one table, while her peripheral vision tracks another table, raising a hand for service, while her mind calculates how many shepherd's pies remain in the kitchen, while her feet carry her toward the bar to prepare drinks for the order she just took. Oliver has emerged from the kitchen to help with food service, carrying plates with both hands, delivering meals to tables with quiet competence. He's not naturally social, doesn't engage in banter the way some servers do, but his efficiency speaks for itself. Plates arrive hot, arranged properly, accompanied by the correct accompaniments. Guests receive exactly what they ordered without confusion or error. His communication with Hannah is minimal, but perfectly effective. A shared language of glances and nods, developed over years of working together. The apprentices have ordered food, 3 plates of fish and chips that arrive golden and steaming. They dive in with youthful appetite, their conversation pausing only briefly before resuming around bites of food. Hannah notices one of them has accidentally knocked his fork to the floor and brings a replacement without being asked, earning surprised thanks. These small observations are part of good service, noticing needs before they are articulated, solving problems before they become complaints. A party of 5 enters, and Hannah experiences a moment of concern. Every table is occupied, and 5 people require specific accommodation. But then she notices the elderly wizard in his corner booth is finishing his meal, gathering his things, preparing to leave. She approaches and asks politely if he enjoyed everything. He confirms that he did and pays his bill, leaving a generous tip. Hannah thanks him warmly and begins clearing his table even before he's out the door, knowing the incoming party will need it immediately. The booth cleaned and reset in under 3 minutes. Hannah guides the new party to it, distributing menus and taking drink orders. They're celebrating something, a birthday perhaps, their mood festive and loud. They order a round of mulled mead and promise to decide on food shortly. Hannah delivers their drinks and leaves them to their celebration, pleased that the pub can accommodate their happiness, that the space she maintains can host important moments in people's lives. Behind the bar, she's running low on clean glasses. The charmed dried ones from earlier are all in use, and the washing isn't keeping pace with demand. She signals Oliver with a quick gesture, and he nods understanding, taking over table service while she focuses on glass production. Her hands move quickly through the hot water, washing and rinsing in rapid succession, feeding the drying rack that can only handle a dozen glasses at a time. It takes 10 minutes to get ahead of demand, but she manages it, restocking the shelves with clean glasses ready for use. The ministry worker at the bar orders another double-fire whiskey. Hannah pours it, noting that his shoulders have dropped slightly, his tension easing. He's not drunk, just unwinding, using alcohol for its intended purpose of relaxation. She places the glass before him, along with fresh nuts, catching his eye briefly. "Rough day?" she asks. He nods wearily. "Rough week," he says. "Rough month, if I'm honest." She makes a sympathetic noise and moves on, giving him space but having offered acknowledgement of his struggle. A table near the door is unhappy with something, their body language suggesting complaint before they even raise a hand. Hannah approaches immediately, asking how she can help. "The soup is cold," one of them says, not angrily but firmly. Hannah apologizes immediately, takes the bowl and returns to the kitchen. Oliver tastes it, confirms it was served at proper temperature, but has cooled during their conversation, and quickly ladles a fresh bowl from the pot. Hannah returns with the hot soup and a complimentary order of fresh rolls, apologizing again. The table's annoyance dissolves, the problem solved with speed and generosity. Nick has retreated to his table, watching the busy room with obvious pleasure. He thrives on evenings like this, Hannah has learned, when the pub is full of life and movement. She catches his eye, and he smiles, raising his phantom mug in a toast to successful service. Hannah smiles back, appreciating the gesture, grateful for his steady presence through all the evening's chaos. Even ghosts can be good company, she thinks, especially ghosts who understand hospitality and appreciate its execution. By 9 o'clock, the rush is beginning to ease. Some tables have paid and left. Others are lingering over final drinks, but clearly winding down. The party of 5 remains boisterous, but has settled into dessert and coffee. The apprentices have switched to water, sobering up before heading home. David and Sarah are preparing to leave, folding away the knitting, marking pages in books. The pub is transitioning from dinner service to late evening drinking, a shift in energy that Hannah recognises and adjusts to instinctively, her service style changing to match the changing atmosphere. As the pub quiets, Nick signals Hannah over to his table. She brings him a fresh cider, even though the previous one remains untouched, and sits down across from him, grateful for the chance to rest her feet. The other guests pay no attention to their conversation, seeing only Hannah sitting alone at an empty table, perhaps taking a break. Only those with the sight would see Nick, would understand she has company in her solitude. I was thinking earlier about my first Christmas after death, Nick says, his voice taking on the thoughtful quality it gets when he's preparing to tell a story. It was a strange thing, that first December of ghosthood. I had died in October, you see, and the initial shock of being dead was still quite fresh. Everything was confusing. I didn't understand what I was or what I was supposed to do. Hogwarts took me in, of course. They've always been good about accommodating ghosts, but I felt utterly lost. Hannah settles in to listen, recognising that Nick needs to tell this story, that it's important to him in ways she might not fully understand. Ghosts have so few ways to participate in the world. Conversation is one of their remaining tools, and she honours that by giving him her full attention. She sips her own drink, a small glass of cider, and nods encouragement for him to continue. Christmas came, and the school was transformed, Nick continues. Decorations everywhere, students excited, feasting planned, and I felt nothing. Not physically, of course. I can't feel temperature or taste food or experience physical pleasure, but emotionally too, I felt nothing. The joy that I remembered feeling at Christmas when I was alive, that anticipation and warmth, it was just gone. Dead like me. I floated through the celebrations feeling like an empty shell, a memory of a person rather than an actual person. The Great Hall had a magnificent tree that year, covered in candles and enchanted snow. Students sang carols, dreadful ones, terribly off-key, but full of enthusiasm. The feast was extraordinary, dozens of dishes, everything you could imagine. And I watched it all from the ceiling, literally. I developed this habit of floating near the rafters, where I wouldn't be in anyone's way. I watched living people celebrate life, and I mourned what I'd lost with an intensity I hadn't yet experienced in death. Nick pauses, his pearly form flickering slightly in the candlelight. Hannah remains quiet, letting him work through the memory at his own pace. Around them, the pub continues, its gentle evening rhythm, conversations providing background noise that makes their quiet exchange possible, paradoxically giving them privacy through proximity to other sound. But then something unexpected happened, Nick says. A young student, first year, very small, very homesick. She was crying in a corner, overwhelmed by the noise and missing her family. And I floated down from the ceiling and sat beside her. Well, sat in the ghostly way, and I talked to her. I told her that I understood missing people, that loneliness was the worst part of existence, whether you're alive or dead. And somehow, through comforting her, I felt something. Not warmth exactly, but a sort of satisfaction, a sense of purpose. She stopped crying eventually, and she thanked me. She actually thanked me, this tiny living person thanking a ghost for kindness. And I realised something important. I might be dead, but I could still matter. I could still provide comfort, offer company, witness joy even if I couldn't experience it directly. Being dead didn't mean being useless. It just meant finding new ways to participate, different ways to contribute to the living world. Since then, Christmas has been my favourite time, Nick continues. Not because I can enjoy the physical pleasures, obviously, but because it brings out the best in people. The generosity, the kindness, the reaching out to others. Even ghosts can appreciate that, can feel some echo of what makes the season meaningful. So I come here every December evening, and I watch you create warmth and welcome. And it reminds me that existence, even ghostly existence, can have purpose. Hannah finds herself unexpectedly moved by this confession. She'd never considered what Christmas might mean to someone who can't taste the food, feel the warmth, or exchange gifts in any meaningful way. But Nick has found his own meaning in observation, in witness, in the vicarious experience of joy through others' celebration. "Thank you for telling me that," she says quietly, "and thank you for choosing to haunt here. You're always welcome at the Leaky Cauldron." Nick smiles that peculiar ghost smile and nods his appreciation. They sit together in comfortable silence, two beings separated by death, but connected through shared appreciation of hospitality's essential work. By 10 o'clock, the pub has emptied considerably. Only a handful of tables remain occupied, a pair of old friends deep in serious conversation at a corner booth, a solitary reader on the raised level, and the ministry worker still at the bar, now on his fourth whiskey, but showing no signs of intoxication beyond a slight softening of his rigid posture. The energy has shifted from bustling to contemplative, from social to intimate, the space contracting as fewer people occupy it. Hannah has dimmed some of the candles, letting shadows grow longer, creating an atmosphere more suited to late evening. The fire continues burning steadily, but its light seems gentler now, more comforting than cheerful. Outside, snow is falling more heavily, visible through the windows in the streetlight's glow, creating that particular hush that snowfall brings, muffling the world, making indoor spaces feel even more sheltered and safe. She washes the final dinner dishes, stacking clean plates on their shelves, returning the pub to order. Oliver has finished in the kitchen and said goodnight, heading home to his flat above a shop in Diagon Alley. The kitchen is clean, tomorrow's prep partially complete, everything shut down properly. Hannah is alone with her remaining guests, maintaining the space for those who need it, staying open for the stragglers who aren't ready to face the cold quite yet. The reader on the upper level finishes her book and descends the steps, approaching the bar to pay her bill. She's been here for 3 hours, Hannah realises, nursing a single mulled mead while consuming an entire novel. Some people use the pub as a reading room, finding its atmosphere more conducive to concentration than their own homes. Hannah tallies the bill, charges only for the drink, accepts payment with thanks. The woman pulls on her coat, tucks the finished book into her bag, and leaves with a quiet goodbye, the door closing softly behind her. The two friends in the corner booth are having one of those conversations, Hannah can tell, the kind that requires a certain type of space. One of them is crying quietly, the other listening with focused attention, occasionally offering a tissue or a gentle word. Hannah has learned to recognise when tables need privacy, when approaching with offers of refills would be intrusive rather than attentive. She leaves them alone, trusting they'll signal if they need anything, respecting the important work of friendship being performed in her pub's safe space. The ministry worker orders another whiskey, his fifth. Hannah pours it but makes it a single rather than a double, a subtle intervention he doesn't seem to notice. She's not his keeper, but she has responsibilities, both to him and to the pub. She'll serve him while he's coherent, but she's watching for signs that he needs to be cut off, that comfort is becoming excess. So far, he's fine, just gradually unwinding years of accumulated tension, one measured drink at a time. Nick remains at his table, as he has all evening, simply watching, simply being present. Hannah realises that he'll probably stay until she closes, that his evening ends when hers does. That part of his purpose here is bearing witness to the entire arc of the pub's night. She finds this touching somehow, this ghostly dedication to complete observation, this commitment to seeing things through to their end. It's a kind of loyalty, she thinks, even if it's loyalty to a place rather than a person. She makes herself a cup of tea, Earl Grey, and leans against the bar, allowing herself a moment of stillness. The evening has gone well, no major problems, no difficult guests, decent revenue, good food served, drinks poured with care. Another successful night at the Leaky Cauldron. Another small victory in the ongoing work of hospitality. Hannah sips her tea and feels the satisfaction that comes from work done properly, from maintaining standards, from being part of something larger than herself. The snow continues falling outside, accumulating on windowsills, softening the angular city into gentle curves. Inside, the fire burns, the candles glow. The remaining guests occupy their spaces with quiet contentment. The pub breathes its ancient calm, the same peace it has offered for 500 years, unchanged in its essential purpose, despite centuries of surface transformation. This is what Hannah protects, she realises, not just a building or a business, but this feeling, this atmosphere, this sense of refuge that the Leaky Cauldron has always provided to anyone who enters seeking warmth. She finishes her tea and rinses the cup, checking the clock. 10:30? Another 90 minutes until official closing, though she'll stay later if guests need it. Flexible within reason about when the evening ends. Some nights go late, others end early. Tonight feels like it will be somewhere in between, winding down naturally, guests gradually departing until she's left with only Nick and the responsibility of securing the pub for the night. She settles in to wait, patient, attentive, maintaining the space until its final guest decides to leave. The older couple in the booth finish their shared fish and chips, pushing the empty plate to the table's edge with satisfied sighs. They remain seated, not ready to leave, despite having finished eating, content to simply occupy the space together. The man pulls a small flask from his coat pocket, offering it to the woman, who shakes her head with an affectionate smile. He takes a modest sip himself, before returning it, the gesture clearly part of their long-established routine, a small rebellion against age and propriety that they still enjoy decades into their partnership. Hannah approaches to clear their plate and asks if they would like anything else. Just to sit a bit longer, if that is all right, the woman says. The cold is rather sharp tonight, and we're not quite ready to face it yet. Hannah assures them they are welcome to stay as long as they like, that there is no rush, no pressure to vacate their booth. This is exactly what the pub should offer, she thinks. Not just food and drink, but time and space, permission to exist without hurrying, refuge from whatever waits outside. The two colleagues from Diagon Alley have progressed from fire whiskey to butterbeer, moderating their consumption now that the initial urgency of unwinding has passed. They are talking more quietly now, their conversation having shifted from work complaints to more personal topics, the way conversations do when alcohol loosens tongues but has not yet impaired judgment. Hannah overhears fragments as she passes. Plans for tomorrow, concerns about aging parents, hopes for career advancement, the ordinary struggles of ordinary lives shared in the ordinary space of a pub on an ordinary Saturday night. The young wizard and the witch who joined him are exchanging information about themselves, the basic biographical details that strangers share when deciding whether acquaintance might become friendship. She is a healer at St. Mungo's, working night shifts in the emergency ward. He is an apprentice wandmaker, learning the ancient craft under a master in Diagon Alley. They discuss the challenges of their respective professions, finding common ground in dedication to demanding work, in the satisfaction of skill development, in the peculiar loneliness that comes from specialised magical careers. Hannah watches them warm to each other and hopes this chance meeting will lead somewhere positive. The four witches are winding down, their energy flagging after hours of sustained conversation and celebration. They split the bill with practiced efficiency, having clearly done this many times before, each contributing her share without drama or confusion. They gather their things slowly, reluctant to end the evening, but acknowledging that all things must conclude. One of them catches Hannah's eye and mouths "thank you," a gesture of appreciation that requires no verbal acknowledgement. Hannah nods, pleased to have hosted their gathering, grateful that the Leaky Cauldron could serve as backdrop for their friendship's maintenance. The ministry worker has finally stopped talking, his monologue about bureaucratic frustrations having run its course. He sits quietly now, staring into his empty glass, and Hannah reads exhaustion in his posture. She approaches gently. "Shall I call you a cab, or will you be all right getting home?" He looks up, surprised by her attention, by her care. "I will be fine," he says. "Just needed to sit somewhere that was not my flat, somewhere with other people nearby, even if I was not really talking to them." "Thank you for tolerating my rambling." She assures him that no tolerance was required, that he was welcome to talk or not talk as he preferred, that the pub exists partly for exactly this purpose, providing company without demanding interaction, offering presence without requiring performance. He pays his substantial bill without complaint, and leaves with more steadiness than she expected, his evening of solitary drinking having achieved its goal of processing difficult emotions without crossing into genuine intoxication. The door closes behind him, and Hannah hopes he sleeps well, that tomorrow brings him easier hours than today did. Nick remains at his table, a constant presence through all the evening's shifts and changes, and Hannah brings him yet another fresh cider, maintaining the ritual, even though this one will also go undrunk. He accepts it with his usual gracious formality. "You run a fine establishment," he says. "Tom would be proud of what you have maintained here, of how you have honoured his legacy, while also making the pub your own. That is a difficult balance to strike, preserving tradition while allowing evolution, and you manage it admirably." Hannah feels emotion rise at this compliment, unexpected and deeply meaningful coming from someone who has observed the pub across multiple ownerships, who has perspective spanning decades. "Thank you, Sir Nicholas," she says quietly. "That means a great deal, truly. I worry sometimes that I am not doing enough, that I am letting things stagnate, that Tom would see ways I am falling short. Hearing that you think I am succeeding helps more than you might realise." Nick's expression softens as much as ghostly features can soften. "We all doubt ourselves," he says, "the living and the dead both, though our doubts take different forms. You are doing well, Hannah, trust that, and know that even when you cannot see it clearly yourself, others do. The pub thrives under your care, the guests are well served. The traditions continue while also adapting. That is success, even if it feels mundane from inside the daily work of achieving it." The fire shifts in the hearth, a log collapsing into coals, and Hannah moves to tend it. She adds a fresh piece of wood, adjusts the arrangement with the poker, ensures the flame catches properly, before returning to the bar. These small acts of maintenance fill her evenings, the repetitive tasks that keep everything functioning, that prevent small problems from becoming large ones. Some might find such work tedious, but Hannah has learned to see it as meditative, as grounding, as connecting her to all the previous landlords who performed these same tasks, who tended these same fires, who maintained this same space across 5 centuries. 11 o'clock arrives, and Hannah begins her final rounds, moving from table to table with quiet efficiency. The 2 friends in the corner booth have finished their conversation, eyes red but expressions relieved. The crisis talked through, support given and received. They pay their bill and leave together, arms linked, stepping into the snowy night with visible reluctance. Hannah watches them go, hoping whatever burden they carried has been lightened by their time in the pub's sheltered space. The ministry worker finally pushes his glass away, empty, and requests his bill. Hannah tallies it, noting he's had 5 whiskies over 4 hours, which isn't excessive given the time frame. He pays with careful counting of coins, his movements still precise, and thanks her with formal politeness. She wishes him a safe journey home, and he nods, wrapping his scarf with the deliberate attention of someone who's slightly drunk but managing well. The door closes behind him, and then there's only Nick, sitting peacefully at his table, waiting for the evening to officially end. Hannah begins the closing routine, a practiced sequence of tasks that restores the pub to its pristine state. She collects the remaining glasses and mugs, washing each one carefully, drying them with the charm-assisted rack, returning them to their proper shelves. The copper pot of mulled mead gets stored in the kitchen's cold room, its remaining contents still good for tomorrow. The taps get wiped down, the bar surface cleaned thoroughly, the floor beneath checked for dropped items or spills. She moves through the dining area, inspecting each table. Most are clean, but a few need attention. Crumbs brushed away, a sticky spot from spilled cider wiped thoroughly, a chair repositioned to its proper angle. She empties the tip jar, counting the sickles and nuts, pleased by the generous evening. The money goes into the ledger for tomorrow's proper recording, tucked into a small velvet pouch that lives in a locked drawer behind the bar. The candles need attention next. Some have burned down completely and need replacing. Others still have life, but should be extinguished for the night. Hannah moves from table to table with a candle snuffer, the traditional kind, a small brass cone on a long handle. Each candle gets snuffed individually, the same way they were lit, maintaining the ritual that Tom insisted mattered. The pub grows gradually darker as she works, shadows lengthening, the fire's glow becoming more prominent as candlelight fades. She descends to the cellar, through the trapdoor behind the bar, checking inventory levels for tomorrow. The butterbeer barrel is running low, needs tapping a new one soon. The mulled mead supplies are adequate. The fire whiskey stock is fine. She makes mental notes, planning tomorrow's work, ensuring continuity of supply. The cellar is cool but not cold, its temperature maintained by those ancient preservation charms built into the stone. Magic so old no one remembers who cast it. Returning to the main pub, she updates the ledger with the evening's final transactions, recording the ministry workers' 5 whiskies, the reader's single mead, the 2 friends' extended stay. The numbers tell the story of the evening, translating human experience into financial records, converting hospitality into currency. The totals are satisfying, 78 galleons exceeding her estimate, confirmation of a successful Saturday. Nick floats over to the bar as Hannah finishes her paperwork. "Another lovely evening," he says. "Thank you for your company, your tolerance of my presence, your consistent excellence in maintaining this wonderful establishment." Hannah smiles at his formal courtesy, his Tudor-era politeness that persists centuries after such language became archaic. "The pleasure is mine, Sir Nicholas," she replies, matching his formality. "You're welcome here every evening, as you know." He bows slightly, a gesture of respect, and begins to fade. Unlike his arrival, his departure is swift, his pearly form simply becoming less visible, less present, until he's gone completely, returned to whatever realm ghosts inhabit when they're not manifesting in the living world. Hannah watches the space where he was, feeling a small sadness at his departure, grateful for his companionship through the evening's arc. Good company, even ghostly company, makes work more pleasant. The pub is empty now, truly empty, containing only Hannah and the accumulated atmosphere of the evening just concluded. She stands still for a moment, simply observing the space, appreciating its calm beauty, its patient readiness to do this all again tomorrow. This is her favourite time. These minutes after closing, when the pub belongs solely to her, when she can feel its history and continuity without the pleasant distraction of guests demanding attention. The party of 5 finally calls for their bill, their celebration having reached its natural conclusion. They have been here for nearly 3 hours, Hannah realises, checking the time against when they arrived. 3 hours of food and drink and laughter, of birthday wishes and shared stories, of bonds strengthened through gathering. They pay generously, leaving a tip that reflects their satisfaction, and depart in a chattering group, still talking, as they disappear into the snowy night. The pub is nearly empty now, only Nick at his table, the young wizard and witch deep in conversation, and the older couple in their booth remain. The energy has shifted to something quiet and intimate, the space contracting around its few remaining occupants, becoming more private as it empties. Hannah begins preliminary closing tasks while still providing service, wiping down vacated tables, collecting abandoned glasses, tidying without making the remaining guests feel rushed. She checks the clock and sees 11:30 approaching. Official closing is midnight, but she will stay later if guests need it, flexible about the final minutes. The young pair show no signs of leaving, having ordered another round of drinks, clearly, wanting to extend their time together. The older couple remain settled in their booth, reluctant to trade the pub's warmth for the cold street. Hannah will not push them out. They can stay as long as they need. Oliver pokes his head out from the kitchen to say goodnight. His shift complete, the kitchen cleaned and secured. "Busy evening," he says. "Good crowd. Everything went smoothly." Hannah thanks him for his excellent work, for the meals that left guests satisfied, for the reliable partnership that makes her job easier. He waves away the praise but looks pleased, then departs through the back door, heading home after another successful service. The young wizard finally asks for their bill, and the witch reaches for her purse, but he waves her off, insisting on paying. A small courtship gesture, Hannah observes, offering to cover the cost as signal of interest, of willingness to invest in potential future. The witch accepts gracefully, and they exchange information about how to contact each other, making tentative plans to meet again, transforming from strangers to acquaintances with a romantic possibility. They leave together, still talking, and Hannah hopes this chance encounter leads somewhere meaningful. The older couple finally stir, gathering their things with slow deliberation. The man helps the woman with her coat, his movements careful, his attention focused on her comfort. They approach the bar to settle their bill, and the woman squeezes Hannah's hand warmly. "Thank you for the lovely evening," she says. "We needed this, just to sit somewhere warm and peaceful together. You have created something special here." They leave arm in arm, supporting each other against the cold, and Hannah watches them go with satisfaction at having provided what they needed. Now only Nick remains, the last guest, though calling him a guest feels insufficient given his consistent presence, his role as witness and companion through countless evenings. Hannah begins her full closing routine, moving through the tasks systematically, collecting the final glasses, checking every table, emptying the tip jar, updating the ledger with final transactions, preparing the pub for its nightly rest. Hannah descends to the cellar one final time, ensuring all stock is properly stored for tomorrow. The enchanted cooling system hums quietly, maintaining perfect temperature for the butterbeer barrels and mead containers. She runs her hand along one barrel, feeling the slight chill of preservation magic, confirming everything is as it should be. The cellar has served the pub for centuries, its stone walls thick and ancient, its atmosphere cool and stable regardless of season. It smells of earth and old wood and the faint sweetness of spilled beer absorbed into stone over decades. Upstairs again, she pauses at the enchanted mirror behind the bar, studying the pub's reflection one final time. The mirror shows the space in reverse, every detail captured and displayed, allowing her to see the pub as guests might see it when they first enter. The decorations frame the space beautifully. The fire glows warmly. The tables sit ready for tomorrow's service. Everything is in order, everything prepared. The pub resting but ready, sleeping lightly until morning brings new guests and new opportunities for hospitality. Nick has moved to his position near the fire, watching the flames with the peculiar focus that ghosts bring to observation. Hannah knows he will likely remain here after she leaves, spending the night in silent contemplation, keeping vigil over the empty pub. She finds comfort in this thought, the idea that the Leaky Cauldron is never truly empty, never truly alone, that Nick's presence provides continuity even through the hours when no living soul occupies the space. She retrieves her cloak and bag from the hook behind the bar, wrapping herself warmly in preparation for facing December's cold. Her hands are tired from the evening's work, her feet aching from hours of standing and walking, but it is good tiredness, the fatigue that comes from work done properly, from a successful evening completed to standard. She feels satisfaction deep in her bones, the knowledge that she has maintained tradition, provided service, kept faith with all the previous landlords who tended this space. The ledger gets stored in its locked drawer, the cash placed secure in the safe, the keys arranged on their hooks. Each item has its place, each task its proper completion. The closing routine is important as the opening one, ensuring nothing is forgotten, nothing overlooked. Tom taught her the importance of these rituals, the way consistency in small things creates reliability in large ones, the way attention to detail prevents most problems before they occur. Hannah walks through the pub one final time, her fingers trailing along table edges, touching chair backs, making physical contact with the space she serves. It is an unnecessary gesture, purely personal, but it grounds her, connects her to the building's physical reality, reminds her that all of this, the tradition and history and atmosphere, exists in actual wood and stone and brass, in materials that have endured centuries and will endure beyond her own tenure. She is temporary, but the Leaky Cauldron is permanent, or as permanent as anything human-built can be. Nick rises from his position as she approaches the door, floating over to bid her farewell. "Good night, Hannah," he says, with his formal Tudor courtesy. "Another excellent evening, another successful service. Thank you for your consistent excellence, for your dedication to maintaining this wonderful establishment. I shall keep watch until morning, as always, ensuring the pub rests safely through the night." Hannah thanks him sincerely, grateful for his reliable presence, his steady companionship, his centuries of loyalty to this space they both love. She opens the door, and cold air rushes in, shocking after hours in the pub's warmth. Snow is falling more heavily now, accumulating on the street, covering everything in white softness that muffles sound and transforms London's angular architecture into gentle curves. She steps out into it, pulling her cloak tight, feeling the cold bite her face and hands. The door closes behind her with a solid sound, locks engaging automatically, securing the pub until tomorrow's opening. Hannah pauses on the street, looking back at the Leaky Cauldron, seeing it as others might see it, as a place of warmth and welcome standing against the cold darkness. Lights glow in the windows, the fire visible through glass, the decorations creating a festive appearance that invites entry even when no entry is possible. It looks exactly as a pub should look on a December night, she thinks, exactly as it has looked for 500 years of December nights, exactly as it will look for years to come, after she has passed her responsibility to someone else. She begins walking toward home, her footprints marking fresh snow, her breath visible in the cold air. Behind her, the Leaky Cauldron waits, warm in its darkness, the fire banked but alive, Nick maintaining his vigil, everything prepared for tomorrow when the cycle begins again. The pub breathes quietly, resting but ready, holding warmth against cold, offering sanctuary against darkness, performing its ancient function of hospitality even in sleep. 500 years of service, and tonight is just one more night, one more evening of care given and received, one more small victory in the ongoing work of creating comfort and community and home. The fire requires final attention, preparation for the night, when it will burn unattended. Hannah kneels before the hearth, feeling the warmth radiating from the stone, and begins the careful process of banking. The goal is to preserve a core of heat that will last through the night, maintaining some warmth in the building, allowing easy rekindling in the morning. A properly banked fire is both economy and art, wasting nothing, requiring only minimal effort to revive. She uses the poker to consolidate the remaining logs, pushing them together into a compact pile. The wood is still burning, flames flickering actively, and she needs to slow this combustion without extinguishing it entirely. The process requires judgment, understanding fire's nature, knowing how to control it without killing it. Too much intervention, and the fire dies. Too little, and it burns wastefully through the night. Ash from the bucket beside the hearth provides the key. Hannah scoops it carefully, this grey powder that insulates while allowing some airflow, and begins covering the burning logs. She works methodically, ensuring even coverage, building a blanket of ash that will slow the fire's breathing, reduce its oxygen intake, encourage it to settle into glowing dormancy. The flames dim as she works, replaced by steady orange glow visible between ash patches. A final log goes on top, a large one, placed carefully to provide maximum burning surface while fitting within the ash covering. This log won't fully catch tonight, just char slowly on its surface, providing fuel for morning when air is restored and flames encouraged to wake. Hannah covers it with more ash, creating a smooth mound that hides the fire's remaining life, making it look almost extinguished while preserving its core heat. The protective screen gets positioned carefully, its iron frame standing guard over the banked fire. Even reduced to coals, fire remains dangerous, capable of throwing sparks, radiating enough heat to ignite nearby materials. The screen contains these dangers, allowing the fire to rest safely through the night. Hannah double-checks its position, ensuring stability, confirming that it will remain upright even if accidentally bumped by tomorrow's early staff. She stands and observes her work, watching the mound for several minutes. Done properly, a banked fire should show minimal light, just faint glowing through the ash layer, indicating life without active burning. This fire meets those criteria, breathing slowly through its insulated rest, maintaining heat that will warm the pub's interior through the cold night, making morning less harsh for whoever arrives first to open. The hearthstone retains tremendous heat, accumulated through the evening's burning, and will radiate it gradually as the night progresses. Hannah touches the mantle above, feeling warmth stored in the stone, heat that will spread through the building's fabric, keeping things from getting truly cold. This thermal mass is another piece of the pub's ancient design, stone chosen and positioned to serve as heat battery, storing the day's fire for the night's comfort. Tom taught her this banking technique years ago, insisting she practice until she could do it perfectly. A good landlord respects fire, he'd said, understands its power and its needs. Fire has served humanity for millennia, but only when properly tended, properly managed. Neglect fire, and it either dies or destroys. Respect it, and it provides reliable warmth, faithful service, essential comfort. Hannah has taken these lessons to heart, treating the fire as a partner in the work of hospitality. She washes the ash from her hands at the bar sink, scrubbing thoroughly, drying on a clean towel. Her fingernails are grey despite the washing, ash having worked into the creases, but that's normal. Firework leaves marks, temporary evidence of necessary labour. She'll scrub more thoroughly at home, but for now, she's satisfied with clean enough. Her attention needed elsewhere to complete the closing routine. The fire banked properly, warmth secured for the night. Hannah moves on to other tasks, but she glances back at the hearth periodically, checking her work, ensuring nothing has gone wrong, verifying that the fire rests peacefully in its ash blanket. 500 years this hearth has burned, and tonight's fire is just another in an unbroken chain stretching from the pub's founding to this present moment. A living connection to all the previous landlords who've performed this same banking ritual through centuries of December evenings. Hannah moves through the pub with final thoroughness, checking details that matter. Each window gets tested, ensuring the latch is properly secured. The front door's lock gets engaged, the bolt thrown, the chain attached. The back door to the alley receives the same attention, 3 separate locks verifying security. The pub contains valuable stock and even more valuable history, and protecting it is Hannah's responsibility, taken seriously. Upstairs, she climbs to check the guest rooms, though none are occupied tonight. 5 rooms, each one clean and ready. Beds made with fresh linens, towels folded on the washstands. The Leaky Cauldron offers lodging for travellers, a secondary business that provides additional income while serving the pub's original purpose as way station between magical and mundane worlds. Hannah ensures each room's door is locked, each window secured, before returning downstairs. The kitchen requires a final inspection. Oliver has cleaned thoroughly, but Hannah checks anyway, verifying that the stove is completely off, that no food has been left out, that everything is properly stored for tomorrow. The cold room is at correct temperature, the preservation charms functioning normally. The back door is locked, the windows latched. She turns off the lights and returns to the main pub. The cash register gets emptied. The evening's take transferred to the safe hidden beneath the bar. It's an old safe Victorian era, both mechanically complex and magically protected. Hannah works through the combination, feeling the tumblers fall into place, and opens the heavy door. Inside are velvet bags organised by date, each containing a day's receipts. She adds tonight's bag, closes the safe, spins the dial, tests the handle to confirm it's locked. The pub's money is secure. She extinguishes the final candles, working backward through her earlier lighting pattern, leaving only the fire's banked glow and a single candle at the bar to see by. The pub darkens progressively, shadows consuming the space, details fading into obscurity. With most light gone, the decorations become ghostly. The holly and ivy mere suggestions, the frost on the windows barely visible. The pub transforms from cheerful haven to sleeping guardian, resting but ready. Hannah walks the perimeter one final time, touching tables as she passes, a ritual she's developed, making contact with the pub's physical reality, confirming through touch what eyes have verified. Each table solid, each chair properly positioned, everything in order, everything prepared for tomorrow's reopening. The circuit complete, she returns to the bar, satisfied with her checks, confident the pub is properly secured. She retrieves her cloak from its hook behind the bar, wrapping it around her shoulders, feeling the cold that has seeped in despite the banked fire. December waits outside, and she'll face it momentarily, but first she allows herself a final pause, a last look at the space she's tended for the evening. The Leaky Cauldron sits in darkness and warmth, empty of guests but full of history, quiet now but ready to roar with conversation tomorrow, sleeping lightly while London sleeps heavily around it. Hannah picks up her single candle and moves toward the door. Behind the bar, the enchanted mirror shows the pub in reverse, empty tables and banked fire reflected backward, the image slightly dimmer than reality but perfectly captured. She glances at it, seeing what the pub looks like from outside her own perspective, appreciating its symmetry and balance, its maintained beauty, its patient readiness for another day's service. The door opens, cold air rushes in, snow swirls. Hannah steps out, locks turn, keys secure. The pub is closed. She stands on the street. Snow falls softly. Charing Cross Road is quiet. London sleeps. Magic and mundane both rest. Behind her the pub waits, warm in its darkness. The fire glows, preserving heat, ready for morning. Hannah pulls her cloak tight. Breath mists. She walks toward home. Footprints mark fresh snow. Tomorrow will erase them. Inside, tables rest, glasses gleam. The holly stays green, candles wait, everything ready. Nick will return tomorrow, the fire will burn. Guests will gather, Hannah will serve. The cycle continues, 500 years. This December, this night, part of something larger. The leaky cauldron rests, breathing quietly, holding warmth, keeping watch. Hannah reaches her corner, looks back once, the pub invisible to most, but she sees it, always will. Another December evening at the Leaky Cauldron, another night where warmth outshines winter. Hannah knows she'll remember this quiet shift the way she remembers all the calm ones, not for any grand event, but for the peaceful rhythm of simply tending to a place built on welcome. These are the nights that matter, these small steady acts of care. Rest. Good night.